Timothy here. I know I'm a couple days late. The full set was spoiled on Monday for Conspiracy Take the Crown. I'm recording this on a Wednesday, but I've had a pretty busy week, so I wasn't able to look at the last few spoilers. A lot of them were leaks that we'd already seen, but there are a couple more newly printed cards that I would like to just run over real quick. A lot of the exciting stuff is really out of the way, and you'll notice the first card I have up here on the screen is this Kaya Ghost Assassin, but it's alternate art from the one that we already seen, the one that was the first spoiler for Conspiracy. And I was checking it out. I was wondering how you get it. I assumed it was like a promo of some sort, but normally how they've been doing recently is if it's a promo, they'll have a P down here somewhere to indicate that, and they'll even tell you where it's from in small letters. So if you look at like game day promos, they have the word game day down here. If you look at I don't know, I can't think of it, like release day promos, they'll have that down there as well. But this is not a promo, and I was looking, you'll also notice it's number 222 out of 221, so it's not actually like a collector's item in the set. But from what I could gather on, the internet and what I looked online, it appears that if you get a foil, if you have a foil Kaya in your pack, it's one of these with the alternate art. So from what I read, that means there are no foils of the other version of Kaya, the one we initially saw, but this simply replaces the foil versions. Kind of like Ugin's, the Ugin's Fate booster packs from Fate Reforged, where they had the alternate cards, but this is actually something you can pull out of a Conspiracy pack, or so it seems. Those aren't from like confirmed sources or anything like that, so no promises. If it turns out that you can get foils of the other version of Kaya, then so be it. But this is just what I looked up online from like Reddit and stuff like that. So that's pretty interesting that they've got an alternate art version of a card in the same set. I think it's pretty cool. And, same kind of background, except she's phasing through the door instead of sitting outside of it. I think it's pretty neat. And honestly, I'd be happy. I'm a little disappointed that there are no foils of the other art. But if that happens to be the case, then, it's fine either way. I'd be happy with a non-foil just as much as a foil. But I'm going to very quickly go through the last couple cards that were spoiled. And since we got through that huge list of leaks, thank you for anyone who watched that video, then most of this will be, chaff and stuff like that. So very first card here is a rare Conspiracy called Emissary's Ploy. Before drawing your opening hand, you choose 1, 2, or 3, and you can cast creatures of the chosen number with any color of mana. So this is pretty neat if you're playing like a 5-color deck, which I imagine is actually going to be pretty popular in this format because people like to take these multicolor cards and then they get a little ambitious and they take like, a Dragon Lair Spider after taking a Duskwatch Seer or something like that, or Duskmantle Seer, and suddenly they're, spread across a bunch of different colors. They can't decide, and then you get this, and it's like, oh, fantastic. So this lets you play, hopefully you're like 2 or 3 drops for any color of mana, but if you have like Birds of Paradise in your deck, but you're not really playing green, or you're playing 5-color, or you have a lot of 1 drops or something, then sure, you might as well be able to play this. And if you pick it up at any point in the draft, you're going to play it anyway, and name whatever converted mana cost you have the highest concentration of in your deck, and it's just a little bit of a buffer so you don't get mana screwed. So even in a 2-color deck, then it's okay. Does absolutely nothing in a mono-color deck, though, so I would stay away from that. Moving on to finish out this cycle, I don't know what you want to call them. Colored Conspiracies is kind of what I called them before, but this is the Hidden Agenda in white. So you name a creature, and then you can flip this at any time, and it has an effect on that creature. And it says whenever a creature you control with the chosen name attacks, you may pay white. If you do, that creature gains indestructible until end of turn. So a couple reasons I like this. First off, that's a pretty decent effect. If you played the card Nahiri's Machinations in Shadows over Innistrad, and you're in a really aggressive deck, it's actually pretty decent. It lets you send a creature into the red zone every turn without worrying about having to trade it off or anything. So if it's like a 2-mana 3/1 or something like that, it's either going to get in there or it's just going to, be chumped by a creature, which is good either way for you. What I also like about this card is that it's really, really strong in red-white decks, and it seems like red-white is one of the well-defined archetypes in this format because you have kind of the melee theme, you have the Lord, if you will, in Adriana. And this effect can really help out with melee creatures because it'll let you make an indestructible creature that can attack an opponent who otherwise might have been able to just, chump it off and kill your guy. Sometimes melee incentivizes you to make poor attacks into an opponent who can kill your creature off, just so you get that extra bonus on your other creatures. And I'm not saying that's the best way to play melee creatures, but it's definitely a possibility. Adriana's Valor lets you make one of your really, really weak creatures indestructible so it can attack and get melee bonuses or give other melee bonuses and still get the benefit of not dying in that combat. So I think it's a pretty decent card. Noble Banneret is 2 and double white for a 3/3 uncommon human knight. You draft it face up. Whenever you draft a creature card, you may reveal it, note its name, and then turn the Banneret face down. And as long as you control one or more creatures with the name you noted, Noble Banneret and those creatures get +1/+1 and have a lifelink. I think this is a really strong card. I think a 3/3 lifelink for 4 would already be pretty strong. The problem here is that if you don't control the creature, then this is just a hill giant, which is okay, but a little unexciting in a match where you want to have board presence at all times and you want to have like the biggest, baddest thing on board at most times. So that you're the threat, or at least play defensively. This kind of doesn't work towards either of those goals if you don't have the named creature on board. But if you have at least 2 or 3 of a certain creature and they're pretty cheap, then Noble Banneret becomes an actual really big threat, becoming a 4/4 lifelink actually, and the other creature gets +1/+1 in lifelink as well. So a couple things have to go right for this card to be good, but those things aren't necessarily that hard to pull off. And if you have any sort of like tutor effect for the creature that you named with the Banneret, then I think it's a pretty solid card. Moving on from there, Hedron Matrix is being reprinted for some reason at rare nonetheless. This is probably one of the most disappointing rares you can get. It does make things really, really big, but out of all the card types, people talk about auras all the time being like a waste of mana and usually not playable, but equipment to me is like, it's got to be really good for me to like a piece of equipment, and starting at 4 mana and then another 4 to equip is not where I want to be for pretty much anything. It does give, a sizable boost depending on what you're equipping it to, but one of the good things about equipment is it turns, if you're playing like a token strategy, it turns those small tokens into an actual threat, and you can just equip to more and more tokens. Hedron Matrix doesn't do that. In fact, it doesn't do anything with tokens because their mana cost is 0, and it doesn't really work on small creatures. All it does is make bigger creatures even bigger, which is not necessarily like a good effect. So unfortunately, Hedron Matrix is a total bust of a card to me, and unless you're putting it on like some gigantic trampler, I don't see any reason to play it. Farika's Mender, I'm glad they printed this because it highlights my problem with Conspiracy, having looked at the whole set by now, in that a lot of the like, we started off super strong, and I'm not saying anything like really bad about the set, it's just kind of a gripe. First off, too many Theros reprints. Theros wasn't that long ago. Sets like this, we really want to see reprints from a little farther back, cards people probably don't have in their collection for people who want to collect or play cards in EDH, but too many Theros reprints, and then too many cards that just seem really random, like especially Farika's Mender. It's a decent card. It gets an enchantment back from your graveyard when it enters the battlefield. It's got an okay body, not the best, but normally what we've come to expect from core sets and like these Eternal sets and even standard block sets like Shadows and Eldritch Moon is that the uncommons and the multicolor cards kind of dictate what the color pairs are supposed to be doing. But I can't honestly say green-black is like the enchantment theme in this set. It just seems like a completely random card. It doesn't seem like there is a theme or an actual archetype to a lot of the color combinations, which means a lot of times you're just going to be drafting a good stuff deck. And while there's not really any problem with that, it does make drafting a little less interesting. So I'm not knocking it. Conspiracy is still going to be a blast to draft just because of the concept, but a lot of the commons and uncommons are like wildly just random, and Farika's Mender's like okay, but it's not going to be like a hallmark of a black-green deck, I don't think. There aren't even like that many enchantments that are super, super awesome to get, and a lot of the enchantments you are playing are ones that, you're not going to have a enter the graveyard. They're just going to be static abilities on board. So really, really awkward choice here. And I will express that I feel a lot of disappointment for some of the common and uncommon choices, but that's just my opinion. I feel like a lot of people might support that. Moving on, this is a new card. I like all the new cards. Coveted Peacock is 3 and double blue for a 3/4 flyer, which is okay. 3/3 flying for 5 is like the baseline for a flyer for me to really like it. So 3/4 is just a little bit better. When it attacks, you may goad target creature defendant player controls. And I made this mistake with a couple of the other goad cards below that I made in my other videos, or mentioned in my other videos, and that is when I attack with Coveted Peacock, I can only goad a creature of the person I'm attacking. I can't attack player 1 and then goad player 3's creature. It does say I have to go defendant player's creature, so it has to be the person I attack. So if I'm really trying to get a creature off board, or I'm trying to force it to swing into someone else, I have to attack the player who owns that creature, which is interesting. A couple other cards are worded like that. I believe Grenzo is similar, where you have to goad the person you attacked with a creature or something like that. So double check those cards if you're watching these videos. I might have been incorrect about a couple of them. Charmbreaker Devils is okay, and again, like blue-red, I'm going to make a video about the archetypes in Conspiracy, but unlike my Eternal Masters videos, it won't cover all the color combinations, because some of these combinations don't really have a well-defined theme, and it's not worth going over a video that only highlights 1 or 2 cards in a strategy. Blue-red, however, does have like this little mini spell theme, and Charmbreaker Devils is like the key rare for that, I believe. You've got like your Kiln Fiend, your Mnemonic Wall. I think Gutter Snipe is in here too, so you've kind of got that theme going on. And Charmbreaker Devils is a very strong card, especially when a lot of the 6-drops in this format have smaller bodies. It's just a good card. It's free card advantage, and it can become a really, really strong beater in a certain deck. So I guess that is a theme you can draft around if you start your draft off with a Charmbreaker Devils or something like that. And then Repulse here, not sure what set Repulse was originally from, but if you're playing Eldritch Moon, Drag Under is a really strong card. Repulse is Drag Under, except at instant speed, which makes it even better. And I believe Repulse saw standard play when it was in whatever block it was in, so I would be very, very happy with it. Remember that effects like this do lose a little bit of value in a 4-person game or a free-for-all game. Drag Under is a hallmark because you're messing with one opponent and it helps you get through to that one opponent. Repulse is going to do the same, but it's going to pay no attention to the other 2 opponents on board. So keep that in mind. The same goes for Murder down here. Murder, it's at common, which is a huge distinction because Murder feels like a common card in this set, whereas it feels like an uncommon card in Eldritch Moon. In Eldritch Moon, you're only playing one opponent, so killing their best creature is great. Doing that in a commander game, or virtually a commander game, a 4-person free-for-all is the same idea, except it loses a little bit of its value because you're not interacting with 2 of the other players at the board. Infest is interesting. There are so many every block nowadays has like an Infest type card, and Infest is the original Infest, but think Drown of Sorrow, Biting Rain from Shadows, Rise in Miasma, Flaying Tendrils, like all of those are Infest variants, and they're not necessarily bad either. Infest is a little awkward because there's some opponents where it'll do nothing against, and there is no sideboarding like I mentioned before, so it's a little bit of a decision as to whether or not you put it in your deck or not. One thing I do like about Infest is that in the black decks, most of the black creatures that have been spoiled and released for this set have high toughness, so you're not going to enter that category where you're wiping a lot of your creatures too. So my inclination is you could mainboard a card like Infest and be reasonably happy with it if it doesn't kill most of your creatures. That's true for most formats where Infest-style cards are printed, but especially in this one because it has the potential to interact with all players, unlike a card like Murder or something like that. And you'll notice Infest is uncommon, whereas Murder is common. And I think in a normal block set designed for 1-versus-1 games, you would actually see the reverse of that, where a card like Infest might even be common, and Murder could be uncommon. And then I believe there's 3 more here. I already talked about Avatar of Woe and so on. So Vertigo Spawn, a card I'd never seen before. I believe this is Dissension. It's a 0/3 for 2 with Defender. Whenever it blocks a creature, tap that creature and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So basically a much, much, much worse version of Wall of Frost, but at a slightly cheaper cost and easier to cast cost too. If you're playing some sort of late game blue deck, this is exactly what you want, and I can't really imagine playing it pretty much anywhere else. Faith's Reward is a very interesting reprint. Not a bad card by any means, but it takes a little bit of setting up for it to be good. It's 3 and a white for an instant, and all the permanents that went to the graveyard from your side of the battlefield that turn, you put them back on the battlefield. So you get to rebuy enter the battlefield triggers. If you cracked like an artifact or something like that, or even like an Evolving Wilds, you get to put those back on the battlefield. It is an instant too, so you can do a bunch of blocks, trade off a bunch of creatures, and then sometime before the end of your opponent's turn, pay Faith's Reward, and then get back all of those creatures that died in combat that turn. So a lot of interesting things you can do with it, and I feel like this is a main deckable card. You'll notice again, I don't see the rarity here, but I have to imagine that Faith's Reward is still rare. It just has the type of effect where it can get you a ton of things all at once, so I imagine it has to be rare. I believe Faith's Reward is banned in Modern because of eggs, but that might be the other card, or Second Sunrise or something like that. I don't know. Is Faith's Reward banned in Modern? I'm not entirely sure. And then last card, last conspiracy spoiler, Guardian of the Gateless. This is from Gatecrash. It's a 3/3. Sorry, my face is in the way. It's a 3/3 flyer for 5, which remember I said that's the baseline. That's okay. It can block any number of creatures, which is a really good and unique ability to have in a format like this. And then it gets +1/+1 for each creature it blocks whenever it declares a block. So this can be used as a fog, and even better than that, it can be used as a fog that's going to probably eat up 1 or 2 creatures. So it's very, very similar to Watcher in the Web, but I think even a little bit better than Watcher in the Web, and probably justifies its uncommon rarity for that. I imagine it has to still be uncommon. It is a pretty strong effect, but just being able to block any number of creatures makes it really hard for certain opponents to get through by means of attacking, unless they have just a removal spell for Guardian of the Gateless. So I think it's a solid addition to any white deck, and I'd be very, very happy to pick this up really early because it's the type of card that won't wheel. People really value anything that can block multiple times. Even like you don't really consider what that means a lot of times, but even newer players can really see the power of being able to block multiple creatures with one creature. And keep in mind, 100-handed one is in this set too, so there are multiple effects like this. In fact, there's even a 4/4 elf that can block 2 creatures if you're the monarch, so a couple effects like that, and I think they deserve spots. So yeah, there we go. You heard me gripe a little bit about the set. I think the set overall has really good design, but compared to like an Eternal Masters set, which was a slam dunk as far as like archetypes go, and even the most recent like standard sets like Shadows had very well-defined archetypes, and Khans had well-defined archetypes, and it's just a theme of standard sets. I feel like some of the archetypes aren't well-defined, so be on the lookout for my archetype videos, which should be out by Friday. I probably have one coming up shortly after I post this video, which I'm actually going to record after this video, but don't expect a video on all 5 colors or all 10 color combinations, because some of these just don't have archetypes. Like I said, what is black-green's archetype? It's not enchantments, and you can't really look at the multicolor cards here. See, I'm just going to take a look at them real quick because they don't tell you that much. Some of them absolutely do, but the multicolor cards here are just random, like, good in multiplayer cards rather than they are archetype defining cards. So like Duretti is an artifact based card, but it doesn't, like black red is not an artifact based color scheme in this set. Duskmantle Seer is like okay, but what does that tell you about blue black? Not very much. Blue black is just like tricksy Dimir stuff. That's its archetype. Same for Dragonlair Spider. Gruul is not like the token maker in this set. It's really weird. Storm Chaser Chimera, like I said, red blue has like the spell based deck, but this is just an absolute random Theros reprint. Like even Wee Dragonauts or Mercurial Geist would have made more sense in this slot, despite having seen both of those cards very, very recently. So I don't know about some of these choices. A Crowan Hoplite is like red-white wants to attack a lot, I guess. Carnage Gladiator tells us nothing about Rakdos. And you can even see, like, the example here, Dragonlair Spider and Gruul Warchant, like, they're both decent cards. They both fit into green-red decks, but they're not, like, a strategic card. Neither of them are, like, strategy, like, focus cards that you build around. So I'm just a little off-put by the randomness. Like, Carnage Gladiator could have been, I mean, it's not a bad card. This doesn't mean those color combinations are bad. It just means that, you know, there's not a lot of direction to them. And then, yeah, some of the reprints are but overall, I think Conspiracy's looking pretty sweet. I think it is going to be fun to draft. And I do think it will be more fun to play this time. My problem with the first Conspiracy was that it was an absolute blast to draft, and then like the games were so short and not particularly fun. Especially the voting system being revamped is much nicer, and I'm really interested to see how the whole Monarch thing works out when I'm playing. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed these videos. I hope they've been, you know, of some use to a couple people, even though, you know, I'm griping here at the end. But thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Be on the lookout for those archetype videos, but don't expect every color combination. And as always, my name is Timothy, and I will see you all next time.